on endless, free, green energy. Often in the past, when I've been thinking about the future of the world, and particularly talking to younger people who feel despairing about the tragedies and dangers that we face, I've come up with the idea that, as we don't know what we will know shortly, there may be developments which will certainly alleviate many of the problems we now face. And my favourite one, because it affects almost everything, is energy. After the Industrial Revolution, we entered a phase where we used carbon energy to fuel our industries and farming and everything else, chemistry. And that worked pretty well for a while, but in the last 2 or 3 generations we've begun to see the disasters that causes, and of course it's polluting in many ways as well as in the atmosphere, and it is also limited and quite expensive. So I've put forward the suggestion that if we could come up with a form of energy which is the basis of all our lives, which was plentiful if not limitless, which was free, it didn't cost us anything, and above all, which didn't pollute in any way, then this would strike at the heart and root of many of the problems we face. So I was very heartened the other day to come across an article on the web called, or describing, as here, the multi-purpose, you can see it beside this man, about the size of half a human, the multi-purpose modular small reactor being announced by the China National Nuclear Corporation. Now this is a form of nuclear reactor which is very small. You can move it around and soon it will be shrunk, no doubt more, so it would be small enough, for example, to fit in a car. At the moment it's small enough to fit in a very big car, but it's going to be fitted into aircraft carriers and ships in China. And this form of nuclear energy is reputedly very safe, clean, limitless, and just uses what's in the air, hydrogen, and breaks it down and creates nuclear energy. It's going to be used in China, first in aircraft carriers and then in ships, which they were more off the coast of China, and pump salt water, clean it, desalinate it, and then use it for irrigation and agriculture. Now that immediately, if that works and it's extended all over the world, it immediately, as I mentioned, goes to the root of a number of problems. Firstly, if you can pump as much ocean water onto the land as you like, along all the shores, and then obviously using the energy along pipelines, then you can irrigate that, whatever it is, fifth or quarter of the world, which at the moment is desert. Imagine the whole of the northern African deserts, or the Gobi Desert, or many of the other great deserts of the world in the Middle East and elsewhere, being irrigated once again and growing crops. In that situation, the food problems of the world largely evaporate. You could produce 2 or 3 times the amount of food we now have, and alongside that obviate the need for cutting down Amazonia and other forests in order to have areas for cattle, because you can have cattle where you like. There's plenty of good grass and irrigated land for them. So the problems of deforestation, the problems of malnutrition, the problems of water supplies, which is increasingly a huge problem, droughts, wars over dams, all those sorts of things are potentially evaporate. And alongside that, that has other knock-on effects. Much of the refugee problem, the terrible and tragic movement of people from the south to the north in the Americas or across the Mediterranean or elsewhere, is largely because people are fleeing abject poverty and no prospects of jobs or food or anything else or education for their children. Well, this form of energy should make that unnecessary. You stay at home in whichever country you are, and you have as much energy for any aspect of your life. Energy to produce food, water, energy to produce goods of other kinds. You can have synthetic foods, for example. We no longer need to kill large swathes of the natural world, animals, because you can produce artificial foods which already are feasible, and I eat many plant-based foodstuffs, and you can have as many plant-based meats and fish and so on as you like. So basically you stop the cruel farming of animals that goes on, and many of the causes of warfare, which is competition over scarce resources such as water, go away, so it diminishes that. So it's possible to think of a million ways in which this could help. Another is obviously that we have built up already a huge amount of carbon monoxide and other noxious things in the atmosphere, but we do have technologies now to suck that out and to bury it or reuse it, but they're expensive. Suppose you attach these suction machines to this endless source of energy, you can now take the temperature back to the pre-industrial levels or whatever level you want. So you can deal with greenhouse gases and other things like that. And so we can refreeze the areas that are defreezing, the oceans which are rising. We can pump the water onto the land, as I mentioned, and keep the water level as it is. So it's obviously the case, as with all technologies, that it can be misused. As I mentioned, it's going to be put into aircraft carriers and no doubt used in forms of warfare and other things as well. But the positive sides are immense and enormously encouraging. And looking at more detailed accounts of the development of this technology, I can see that almost every country in the world is pursuing it. China, as with many technologies, is well ahead, but other countries are also doing it. So it's predicted to come on stream within the next 5-10 years, hopefully during the time that I'm conscious and aware of it. It's one alongside many other green technologies, of course: wind, water, solar power, and possibly fusion energy, which is another safe source and moving fast. But this one looks particularly promising, and it's almost with us now. So that is the good news for today.